Shelly Miscavige. She has not appeared in public since 2005.
Where's Shelley and what happened?
Where is Shelley?
We're looking at like 17 years of a person just missing.
Shelly Miscavige was given into the sole care of L. Ron Hubbard by her parents when she was 12.
This is where Shelley is believed to be being held captive.
Do you believe that Shelly Miscavige is a threat today?
Oh,
Absolutely.
she's seen it all. She's been by his side the whole time.
Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host for today, Claire Headley, and this is my next episode of Where is Shelly Miscavige, in which we delve deep into who is Shelley and all aspects of how it can be that in this day and age, the leader of Scientology, David Miscavige, has managed to disappear his very own wife and the first lady of Scientology, Shelly Miscavige, for going on 18 years now. My guest for today is my very dear friend, Sterling Tompkins. Welcome, Sterling.
Thank you so much.
I am so glad that we're getting to do this. It's been way too long since you and I had the chance to catch up. So thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on. You know how much I love the entire SB Network's channels, but I'm more partial probably to yours and Mark's in a big way because we share so many experiences together. And you were, I don't know if you remember, you were my Key to Life soup.
I do remember that.
Actually, Key to Life and LSC, yeah.
Yes, I know. When I was watching your chat with Aaron over on Growing Up in Scientology, I was remembering how much you loved baseball and how much that was a conflict for you.
Oh, total conflict.
Oh my
we
goodness.
had the beepers at one point that would actually read messages. And
Yeah.
so you could get the scores and I would go into the bathroom during course when the World Series was on so I could just check the score.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Oh yeah.
How did I never know this about you, Sterling?
Right. Well, and then when you moved to RTC, we had almost zero interaction.
Yeah.
I mean, we were on the same base for 4 or 5 years, and I think I maybe just saw you on your motorcycle during Saturday Renos, and that was it.
Yeah.
But you know, and Mark, I've got tons of stories with.
Yeah.
We
Like
always
I
bump into each other.
said, I'm a proponent that you should start a channel because you have stories for days, and you know we all want to hear them. So you know we could do many collaborations on many different topics, and it would be amazing for all of us and entertaining, at least for you, Mark, and I, if not anybody else.
Yeah, right. And riding your guys' coattails would be awesome because Mark is so good. You guys are so much better at telling stories. I just like to add in the little parts that I remember that maybe give it a little more context and fluff and fun. But no, you guys are excellent. And I also want to say I love how truthful you guys are. I say this to Aaron, I say this to Janice. You don't need to embellish what happened. It was already horrific enough. And the channels that I enjoy the most are the ones that when I hear them talking, I'm like, and I was on the periphery of a lot of these things. You guys are just telling the truth.
Right.
You don't need to exaggerate anything.
No, I know. You're right. That was what was a little annoying when we first got out, was like seeing it's like all this dark and and bleh, and you're like, dude, just as straight as it is.
Yeah.
No, you don't need to pile on. It's just, straight scoop is far more relatable, honestly.
Absolutely. And they have to have all these TV shows now have little bits and pieces of your guys' stories. I mean, really, they do that. You can see parts of what you guys have talked about for the last 10 years. They need to do one. They can't say it's Scientology, but they need to do one with just all these stories compiled together of just the daily life there and just make it interesting. It would be a fantastic script and such a interesting show to watch. But
we'll for sure. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Well, so you and so for our topic for today, where is Shelly Miscavige? I'll just start it off with you create a very unique anomaly in this where is Shelley landscape, in that you were not only her brother-in-law, but also you were her nephew. And only in Scientology would that not be a little startling. So why don't you walk us through that?
I'll walk you through it. So everyone needs to get out their notepads.
Yes.
Because the family tree is so twisted and turny that it's sometimes difficult to hang on to. But here's how it goes.
Okay.
I was born to Foster and Biddy Tompkins in 1976 in Florida. I have a twin brother, Justin. We were born and at Flag, Morton Plant Hospital. And I think about 1978, my parents split. My father, Foster, ended up marrying Barbara Tompkins, and I went with my dad. Justin ended up going with Biddy, and she ended up marrying Ronnie Miscavige Jr., so Dave's older brother and Ron Miscavige Jr. At about 5 or 6 years old, Ronnie and Biddy actually left the Sea Org, and they took Justin and they moved to New Hampshire. Philadelphia first, then New Hampshire. At about the same time, my dad, Foster, got transferred to LA to start up Income. And so he was I actually don't know what his title was, but he started Income, and Barbara was actually the CO, commanding officer of Income.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was because she became a CS later. So that's a little known fact that she was actually the commanding officer. And I don't know how that she got removed from that. I think I mentioned to Aaron or maybe Janice, but when they got removed from that, they were sent to the base to do the RPF. And I woke up with Claudia Olander and her husband in their bed one morning to go to school. I told that story where all of a sudden I was like, oh, those aren't my parents, but they had to leave someone to watch me. And my
oh my gosh. I can totally relate. By the way, I've had that. My mom was on the RPF when I was 6 or 7. The Rehabilitation Project Force, for anyone who doesn't know what that is, slave camp reprogramming, basically in a nutshell, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And the kids shouldn't be affected by that, but the only nice thing was that Claudia was obviously a nice person. So, no,
Claudia and nice. Chris were both very nice people.
Chris, I was trying to remember his name. Thank you.
Yes,
thank you.
Chris Olander. Yeah,
that's right. Very nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so to bounce forward, Justin comes back. In 1984, Foster and Barbara have a son named Nathan, who's my half brother. Okay. And I like to use the word half just because Aaron doesn't understand why I don't just say brother. But I think
I do. I understand. Yeah. So same dad. No.
Yes.
So Foster was your dad. Barbara's not your mother. Biddy is your mother.
That's right.
Yeah, no, it's an important distinction. Half versus step versus actual is a real thing.
And I make a distinction because of Justin. So it's just clear that Justin and I are actual, full brothers. And if Justin wasn't there, you'd just say my little brother, Nathan. But half brother Nathan. At almost the same time, Ronnie and Biddy had Jenna in New Hampshire.
And so again, Jenna is your half sister.
That's right. So same mother. We have the same mom. Yeah.
Okay.
Somewhere in the late 80s, Justin moves back. Ronnie and Biddy join the Sea Org again. Justin and Jenna are now in LA with me. And there's, Justin's in the cadet org sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. Jenna's in the nursery with Benjamin Rinder. Taryn Rinder's there at that time. We're all like this. Darius Wilhair was also there. So we're like this core kind of group of kids that still, stayed together from the time the baby boom happened back in Florida.
Yes.
Moving forward, Justin and Jenna go to the ranch in the early 90s. I go to the ranch after being in SEMO PAC for a little bit. We're all back together at the ranch. Come into mid 90s, Justin and I both graduate to be in SEMO Gold. Jenna is still at the ranch. Nathan's still at the ranch. In 1994, 95, probably late 95, I meet Suzette Barnett.
Yeah.
And Suzette Barnett is Shelley's half sister. They share the same father. They actually looked quite a bit alike too.
They did, they do. Really did. They do. Not they did.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they do.
They do.
And it was an interesting thing. I mean, someone actually said, "Oh, by the way, you should meet this girl, Suzette. She's really cute." I didn't really put 2 and 2 together on that, or that there was any family connection. It was slim pickings, as you know, right? It was,
yes. Yes. Mark talks about that all the time.
Yeah. There wasn't a giant pool. I had some competition, like Jamie did coat. In between the times I would get to go see Suzette in LA when on a CSP on Sunday morning, I would just leave and try to go see her because she was in LA and I was up at Int at the time, or Gold. I remember Jamie Ditko would go down sometimes and talk to her, and she would call me and tell me, why did Jamie come down to see me? So there was that's a whole nother story. I'm going to get off on tangent, but
that's okay.
I ended up marrying Suzette in 1996.
Okay.
And so because Ronnie is related to Dave and he was married to my mom,
and he's your stepdad.
Yeah. And Ronnie was my stepdad, though they didn't raise me and I never officially lived with him. He was my stepdad. Okay. I was, I would get gifts every once in a while from Dave and Shelley for my birthday. And I was the nephew. She wrote it in a card once, and so yes,
when I married, she wrote it in a card once.
Yeah, once. Touching.
Sorry, we'll get off topic.
Got better gifts though. I just have to say.
Yeah. Well, and he he carried the Miscavige name when I knew him.
That's right. Unofficially.
Yeah, I know. For the longest time, I didn't even know that you guys were fraternal twins. It was just everything about it was, like many other things. It at that property, it was just kind of a mind warp.
Yeah, and compartmentalized. You would say would be it was a little of that. Well, I tell the story about the whole in-base survey, stay on base or stay off base, and both Justin and I answered that off base, so the wrong answer.
Oh,
I was sent to OGH to sleep for the night in lower conditions. Marty Rathman came down to Justin and gave him a pardon.
What?
Because his name was Miscavige. Yeah,
unbelievable. And of course, we're talking about, just for context, so people know what you're talking about. Yeah. What year was that? Like 1993, I think.
I think
roughly.
So,
yeah. So roughly. there was a survey done of where everyone was asked, "Oh, do you want to live on base?" on the property, which we didn't live on the property at the time. Right. We lived in town at the apartment buildings, 2 different apartment buildings. Or do you want to live off base? And so because we already were living off base and we could go to, for example, the store on a Sunday morning, if we were lucky, compared to never even being able to leave the property, many people were like, well, I want to go off base because then I can keep going to Vaughn's. Right. And so it was a trick survey, which was very unfair.
And remember at that time on Friday nights when people got home or Saturday nights, we would rent movies every once in a while and order pizza and hang out in the jacuzzi or the swimming pool. That completely stopped in 1995, 96 when the whole Lisa McPherson, I didn't know at the time, but that's when Dave turned super tyrannical towards, everyone. And we used to actually got to hang out. I remember hanging out with people, and that just came to a complete stop at one point. It was unfortunate because it was fun, but it did come to a complete stop.
Yeah.
Okay. So married to Suzette.
Okay. So
what in one of those? Weren't you? You were at one of the weddings. I remember
one of the weddings, maybe.
There were 3.
There were 3 weddings?
Yes, in 2 days. What? I think it's a record. Yeah. So I was 19.
Okay.
And Suzette was 17.
Okay.
So Foster drove us to Vegas.
Oh my gosh. You have so many parallels. That's the age Mark and I were when we got married, and Mark's dad drove us to Vegas. But go ahead.
Where did you get married in Vegas?
At, oh my gosh, the Little White Chapel or something like that.
Yep. That's where I got married in Vegas. Same place. Michael Jordan got married there too. Just,
for what it's worth.
Yeah, for what it's worth. That was the coolest part about it, Okay, so we got married there in the morning, drove down back to Gold, got married at Gold for all the staff there, and then drove down that night to Celebrity Center and got married the next morning in Celebrity Center. So all the family that didn't know about Gold or couldn't go there, Foster's family, Barney, all that stuff could be at the wedding.
Wow. So we got married at Celebrity Center too.
It was a thing.
So what month and year was this?
February 23rd, 1996.
February 23rd, 1996. Okay. So that was right before, that was like 3 weeks before I got promoted to Religious Technology Center. So maybe I was at the wedding that you had at the base. I know I wasn't at the one at Celebrity Center.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
No, I think you were. I think you were. I don't know why I distinctly remember that, but I believe you were. And
yeah.
you know that Amy has a whole part in this story.
Amy
So,
Scobie?
yep.
Oh, do tell.
Whole part. Okay, so and we need to get her to talk about it. It would be interesting to hear her end on it. But what I know is that when I got engaged with Suzette, and even when I married her, she still wasn't at Int yet. She was in CMO-IXU as the CC Programs Ops.
Okay. Meaning as the person who would run programs over a celebrity center.
And Amy was the CO CMO-IXU at the time, and Suzette was one of her star pupils and, up and coming. So she had to give her up and was just not happy about that. But I believe she did it just because she was like, okay, I can see, you want to be with Sterling, and I would love to hear her take on that. But that I didn't know that until a lot later, but she was the reason that was able to happen at some point. Yeah. It was kind of crazy.
Wow. Yeah. Because most often in Sea Org practices, they wouldn't really care that she was in LA and that you were at Int. It wouldn't be a priority for somebody to resolve that.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. She'd have to replace herself and, all the whole rigmarole you have to go through.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how Shelley and I are related. And I do remember a couple months after, and I think it was a Sea Org day, she came up to me and was like, so how's it going with the whole incest thing?
Oh my gosh.
And I had to look up incest. I had no clue what incest meant. But
oh my gosh, that's funny because the other term that would get thrown around a lot at the Int base, by my recollection, was nepotism.
Oh, right.
Yeah, right. Because Biddy and Jenna, and anyway, that's a whole other topic. But so let me ask you: so was Shelley at your wedding?
Yeah, she was.
She was.
And I have photos of my wedding, and I've been looking through them to try to find it, but I realized they probably took, when my stuff was sent to me, I believe they took out the wedding photos that Shelley is in. But her sister Camille's in there, Tracy Orchu's in there, Micho Danelovich, Darius Wilhare, Jesse Reese. I mean, you can see the whole wedding party in there. And the lady that sued and settled and got a ton of money, went through her PC folders.
Oh, Laura.
Yes. Laura DiCrescenzo. I don't know what her last name is now. She was in the wedding party as well. Wow. And Jenna was the flower girl, and Nathan was the ring bearer.
Wow.
So, yeah. Crazy.
That's crazy. And so what was your relationship with Shelley like leading up to the wedding?
It was nice. It was nice. So she would, when I did see her, she'd always smile and ask me how I was doing. A couple times she asked Justin and I to come into the officers' lounge to take pictures with us. And just genuinely smiled and was nice. And even when I was in Pool IC in CMO Gold, one New Year, she invited me to come out with she just said, "Do you want to come with us? I think we're going to Knott's Berry Farm or something the next day." Obviously, that whole group, and I actually turned her down. Yeah, and I'll never. I know why I did, but I don't understand completely. Maybe I was a little bit. I had been having a horrible time on the Pool IC position, and I just wasn't doing good, and my stats were down for 6 weeks, and I was kind of getting in trouble. So I kind of said, well, I don't deserve to go for that reason. So I turned her down on going, which is weird in the end. So I would have had a better story there, unfortunately. But
no, maybe not. I've heard people, like when I was talking with Amy Scobie about her friendship with Shelley, she said at one point Shelley had invited her to come sit with her and Dave at dinner in MCI, Massacre Canyon Inn. And Amy was like, yeah, no, because Dave's just going to rag on me full time and give me a hard time. And and that's not going to be enjoyable for the 30 minutes we get to eat dinner. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Well, I didn't realize that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway. Okay. So you guys get married.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me some of your memories with Shelley that stand out.
Really, those few interactions I told you about, she had and everyone has different experience with her. I get that. I think Jenna has a horrible experience with Shelley. She just always came across to me as kind-hearted and a little bit of the fixer, the I'm going to try to help smooth things out a little bit. after I got removed from SEMO Gold and sent into grounds, I did not see her at all. The last time, except for obviously running around and doing her thing, the last time I had interaction with her, and people at Gold will remember this and be like, okay, the course rooms, you had the practical side, two sides of the qual building, and then there's the practical side and the theoretical side or theory side. And they were so cheap there that they wouldn't really air condition those rooms well enough. Yep. And if everything's too still and quiet and my body temperature goes up, I can pass out. Like not pass out of exhaustion, but just I get so tired. Yeah. So listening to the drudgery that is LRH's voice over and over again, I was in the course room listening to some sort of cassette or tape, and Dave apparently walked in for an inspection, as he would do, just to scare everyone. And I just remember I'm sitting there on my tape deck, and I'm dozing off, and I'm like, then I catch myself, and all of a sudden I feel a hand on my shoulder.
Oh,
and I turn around, and it's her, and she goes, "Try to stay awake." Try to stay awake. and then I see Dave's looking at someone else, and I realize she went out of her way to come over there.
Wow, she saved you from his wrath in that moment. Yeah,
she did, because I was the only one passing out in that. I could never. And also Saturday night tape plays. Those, you want to talk about what I think was the most torturous thing, was the Saturday night tape plays. After you put us in the sun all day, that has cookies and ice cream for dinner, and then you expect us to stay awake for an hour tape play. In again, MCI was always warm because they didn't really want to pay for the air conditioning.
Right.
But that, believe it or not, that's my last real story with Shelley. I didn't get a whole lot, so I'm sorry if it's not as exciting, but I didn't.
That's okay. You know what? Like I said, you present an anomaly in the interactions. But I'm curious if you recall what Suzette's relationship was like with Shelley.
Not good.
Really?
It was. Yeah. Suzette would come home and tell me, and Stacy, there you go. Great question. Because I wouldn't remember this unless you asked that question.
Yeah.
Shelley was tough on Suzette. It was a little bit of I expect so much of you because you're my sister. And I think Suzette never felt like she was getting or reaching up to that level. Yeah. And there was, when I did get removed from SEMO Gold and busted into grounds, Shelley did try to split us up.
Really?
Yeah, and I only have that third person from Suzette, but Shelley apparently told Suzette once, and now at this point Suzette had left SEMO Gold and she was in SEMO Ent. And Shelley had told her, that it's not good, and most time couples shouldn't stay together if one couple's like in SEMO Ent and the other one's in Gold, because he's going to hold you down. Yeah. He's going to bring you down. And that, I think, was in relation to the fact that at one point after Mark Yeager had been removed from post, and you remember that whole thing.
Oh yeah, that whole saga. Yeah, for sure. That's like,
yeah. And I was in grounds, and Suzette was a INR, Director of Inspections and Reports for SEMO Ent, and she would come home. We were on different schedules. At that point, Ent was coming home at 3, and I would come home at like 11.
So you'd get home at 11 p.m. She'd go home at 3 a.m.
Right. Yeah. And so she'd wake me up, and she would tell me stories sometimes. I was not paying attention, nor did I really care that much. So when she got removed from INR and she was now sent into the film lab, that was because she was telling me stories that she shouldn't have been telling me. And that's also when Shelley told her, you shouldn't, you can't, he's going to hold you down. She shouldn't have gone to the film lab anyway. So, but yeah, that was the story, which I never really held that against Shelley. Didn't occur to me as something that was horrible, but in retrospect, it's terrible to do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Shelley did the same to me with Mark, because Mark was obviously in Golden Era.
Yeah.
And I mean, that came from Dave. I never took that as directly coming from Shelley. I mean, Dave told me to my face in mid 2000, "Oh, did you hear about the new personnel policy I'm implementing?" And I said, "Yes, sir," because Shelley had already told me. And the new personnel policy was that you had to be married to somebody in the same organization. And he's telling this to me knowing full well that I've already been married to Mark for 8 years. And this will essentially mean that I'm either going to get kicked out or, removed from my position simply because I refuse to divorce Mark, or I'm going to have to divorce Mark, one of the two. I mean, what the heck?
And that's Dave. He's going to say that to your face because he wants to twist the knife a little bit. And that's absolutely how he is. It's sickening, but it is the truth. And he is, can I segue into something that's related to the subject?
Of course.
So I've talked about the Int Ranch with Aaron, and this does tie right into what you just said about Dave. I've talked about the Int Ranch with Aaron, and a lot of my memories from the Int Ranch were not horribly negative. So I kind of, and he mentioned that some viewers had a problem with that, which is fine. Everyone can have their own opinion. But I thought about that. I went back to, okay, why? Because a lot of my bad memories are from PAC, and then obviously from the wrath of being at Gold when Dave was just ripping everything apart. And I realized something. So in my formative years, from like 7 to 13, that's when you really needed your parents. More than not. That's when they're a bigger factor. And we had family time when I was in PAC. So I got to see Barbara once a day, and she would play baseball with me and hit fly balls. And I got to see Foster more often. There was Libs. Now Dave is the one that canceled that. Okay. Yeah. But I had already been through that stage. So by the time I get to the ranch, I'm like, hey, I don't got my parents, but I'm up here with motorcycles and all this kind of stuff and sports. And so I was kind of happy. It's the age where, and you've got 3 boys, so you're probably acutely aware of this. There's an age where you kind of want to get that separation now. You feel like you're becoming a man, and you can do physical labor, and doesn't make it right. I get that. It does not make it right. But if I'm building the room I'm going to eventually sleep in or something like that, it didn't not make sense either. Well, a lot of the Laura Andersons, the Jenna Miscavige, that young group, they didn't have their parents at all. They saw them once a week, if that. So now you're at that formative age when you really need your parents. Well, that's the disgusting part right there. That's the part where, someone at that younger age needs their mom, needs their dad, needs that direction in life and how to do stuff. You know what I mean? The group with Justin, Mike Brown, Mike Norton, we were older. We were like, we could see our parents, or we couldn't see our parents. It wasn't going to be the end of the world. And I think that's, for me, in my mind, where that separates. But now let's look. Dave is the that took away family time.
Right.
Dave's the one that tried to split up because he couldn't stand that the tie between a husband and wife could be far stronger than the enticement of the Sea Org or Scientology.
And his leverage and control over that person.
And I always think this when I've heard your story, and I've read your story. I've read Mark's book twice, listened to it twice. I've read Leah's book twice as well, and I've also read Jenna's book twice. But your story of being able to stick to your guns, all I got to say is bravo to you. Like, it takes someone like you or Mark to stand up and say, I'm not doing that, or I'm not going to fall for that, or I love that person enough. And that's where I fall to. People go, well, why do you still say some people are good that were there that obviously have done some bad things? Because I could never let anyone, especially the church, tell me the character of another person, because I make that judgment on my own. And Completely. You made that judgment on Mark on your own. And you said, no, I love this man. I'm going to stay with him, vice versa. And I'm the same way. I love Foster. My dad, I love him. I love him. But the last conversation I really had with him was him trying to get me to look at Facebook and take you, Mark, Matt Price, anyone off. And I just said, no, because if you're deciding who my friends are, and I'm an adult, then I'm not free. Right. This is not a free country. I'm now going to live under the tyranny of whatever you decide. And I had to make that decision at that point, and I would take my dad any second back, but not under anyone else's terms or conditions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. I know it's brutal. And by the way, and thank you for that, because I would never ask anybody to do that for me. I know how hard of a choice that is. It's really no choice at all. It's just pure evil. If you want to just, why should you have to choose between your dad and friends? And it's one of the most evil practices of Scientology, in my opinion, how they systematically destroy family connections. But Anyway,
Yeah, they do.
Foster, come talk to Sterling. God damn it! You know who we are.
I may have ruined that chance with this, but you know what? Janice is gonna do a video, and maybe we can appeal to them. You know, saying acknowledging the people that are good there may also help them out a little bit,
Right?
Even if it's just a little bit. It's also absurd to think like here, like I knew you and Mark. So where do you think I was going to go if I needed friendship, a job? It's like I'm just trying to survive too. I mean, there was a friendship, but I was trying to survive. You guys gave me a job after the crisis, after the mortgage meltdown. I had nowhere else to go, and you guys employed me. And then my dad asked me to not talk. Why? Why would that even be a consideration? You know, so you guys, anyways, I can go on about you. And at the end of this video, I got to make sure I keep forgetting to acknowledge you and Leah about the whole Danny Masterson thing and making that happen. And I always watch everyone else's video and it goes, they should be thanking people. But I now see when you start talking, you can get lost in the whole conversation and forget to say that,
which is okay. And don't make me cry either, because that's never fun for anybody.
No. You almost had me with Foster, so I've done enough crying over that one.
You did have me too, but yeah. But I did want to make a comment too.
Yeah.
So on the whole thing about the ranch experience and your perspective, my take on that is a little different because obviously I grew up in the cadet org too. Not that you knew that, because we would never compare notes, you know, when we were in. But I think that's somewhat of a testament to the tenacity of children. And even though it's wrong, their ability to kind of just persist, you know, it's all relative. Like you had no other expectation other than the life you were living. So it's not like you were going to go, oh, well, I should have X, Y, and Z or any of that. And I don't know, again, just speaking from myself, that's the some of the recovery process I've gone through has been gaining perspective through having my kids and realizing like, holy moly, that's how old I was when, you know, my mom joined the C organization, you know, that kind of thing. Anyway.
Yeah, totally. And I get that. And coming from a mom, I mean, you truly do understand that dynamic, right? It's invaluable. And you also let's go back to ranch real quickly. If they had stopped me from playing sports, I would have been out of there. Let's be honest about that. If sports had ever been cut out of the equation, I'm out of there. That's what happened at the in-base eventually. We didn't have basketball anymore. We didn't have this. And it started to take its toll on me a little bit because that was my happy spot. I could tolerate so much, but if you didn't let me play sports, I was going to be a little bit of a, you know, it began to take its toll. That's all.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Oh, and so were there any other noteworthy interactions between you and Suzette and Dave and Shelley in terms of that whole relationship that we should talk about?
Yeah. Well,
or not.
No, I'm trying to think. I mean, I have Dave stories for sure. Yeah. And I guess that would be relevant to you guys talk about PDA. You guys have mentioned about that no one ever saw them. I did actually see them once being affectionate towards each other. Because I was the pool IC.
Yep.
So I walked into the pool one evening, and they decided to take a swim, but I had walked onto the deck of the pool and I looked down over onto where the pool is. I'm sorry, the boat deck.
Yes.
The pool's down there. And I just remember seeing them hugging and kissing. And it always shocked me because I was also I was 16 or 17 at the time. And I was like, oh, whoa. And so I kind of just turned around and walked the other way, but I'll never forget that. So every time someone says, oh, I've never saw them be that together, I just remember that one time that I did, but they thought no one was there. And I just happened to be walking back to my job.
Interesting. And what, what year was that?
Ooh, probably 92, 93.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
So Shelley, at least in later years, like especially after the Lisa McPherson and after Lisa McPherson's wrongful death at the Fort Harrison in, I think that was December 1995. I want to say, I think. So after that, things got dramatically different,
Yes.
at least from my perspective, and particularly in regards to David Miscavige. And Shelley, even in 97, 98, was concerned that David Miscavige was having a psychotic break.
Right.
He had gotten just so erratic, so violent. I'm not sure if you ever saw any interactions between Dave and Shelley that were, him being nasty or violent towards her. I'm curious on that.
I didn't,
Okay.
but I was never in, because I was never in that position. I wasn't in all his meetings.
Yeah.
But I have no reason to believe that the people that did tell the stories that occurred. You mentioned the Lisa McPherson. So that was before I was married. When I wrote a thank you note, or I was asked the question, where am I going on my honeymoon? Dave responded with, well, you need to get back to post at some point. And I already could feel there had been some sort of change, but I never knew the Lisa McPherson thing. And so the beginnings of that lawsuit, that investigation, was right about the time I was getting married to Suzette. And part of the reason probably why he did not come to the LA wedding and was kind of, even at the gold wedding, he was just out of place a little bit. And why wouldn't he come to the LA wedding? His wife's going to be there. It's his wife's family's down there, right?
Right.
So I think those two things kind of correlated. They were close together.
Yeah.
And then it was later in 96 is when I got removed from SEMO Gold, but and he had it out for me after that. There was no question. He did. Well, Mark's got the best story about that. About this snot-nosed little punk.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
then let's save that for a collaboration with you and Mark and I, because that would be very fun. But so that reminds me, I don't think I specifically asked you. So did Shelley come to both of your weddings, both at the base and in LA?
100%. She did.
Okay. Yeah. And so what was her interactions like with her family, like with Barney, Camille?
Very sweet.
Okay.
Very sweet, very nice. And that could just be putting on a show, but you legitimately, you could see she was probably happy to see them and be there. I wish I had the photos to show that because Jeff Baker was shooting the wedding, of course.
Right.
Because it was Shelley's sister. Right. So he was shooting. And in fact, the photos I have the actual SMV free wins on the side. So they must have just used extra stock in F&E when they printed the photos, which is, it's a long story to how that works out, but I'm not going to get into it. But I mean, I wish Shelley would get out, because I think she was legitimately a nice person, raised in that.
Yeah. Do you know, by the way, that her family got deep in when she was approximately 6 years old?
I did not know that. And I heard later about Flo Barnett, did not know any of that stuff. And obviously I didn't know Barney knew you guys.
Oh my gosh. It's so crazy. Like we were talking before we started recording here, the house in Burbank where we reunited. That was where our paths crossed with Barney as well. Barney was such a sweet person.
Oh, he totally was.
Yeah.
And a hard worker too. Just a hard worker. Yeah.
And do you know, we probably talked about this, but his biggest, he was so mad with Scientology because for, I think, at least a year, he was calling Gold to ask to speak to Suzette. And they were just taking messages, and Suzette was long gone. Like she'd been sent to Louisiana, and they never told him that she was out.
I did not. And they never told me she was out either. Like,
wow.
Yeah, I had no clue. I just knew the whole, what went down with that, with, Matt Price and all that. But I did not. No, I didn't know that. And I never saw Barney again. I saw Suzette's mom again a couple times.
Oh, Kathy.
Yeah.
Okay. What was Kathy like?
Well, I told the story on Aaron's channel about the OT7 lady that was sure her friend was in the vestibule and was like, I feel he's here. And I'm like, oh, you really feel
I missed that.
Oh yeah. So we're talking about bad OT power stories.
Yeah,
that was about her. I was just like, you know what, if you're going to lay it out, just toss it up for me to knock it out of the park. You're going to say that you have an OT power, but I can actually verify it on the spot. I'm going to go verify it. And of course the people weren't there. It was her being a Scientologist, delusions of grandeur, unfortunately, but also a sweet lady. So, but I don't know what her relationship. I have not seen Suzette. and I saw her briefly, like in 2007 or 2008. I saw her at Nick and Amy's wedding, Nikolai Allen and
Oh
Amy's
yeah.
wedding.
Yep. We were there.
Yeah. That's right. It was in Malibu.
Yes.
Yeah. And so
in fact, one of my favorite pictures of my oldest son is one that John Lindstein took at that wedding.
Oh, that's awesome.
He had a little suit and tie on and
on the beach, because it was beautiful down there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the last time we didn't have a good marriage under the circumstances, right? Like, how could you even possibly have a relationship? Again, kudos to you and Mark. Like, it is not easy.
No,
it is so tough.
Yeah. And I always tell people, I'm like, Mark and I are a statistical anomaly.
Yes.
Like, it is an absolute miracle, because really we were married 13 years at that base, but then it was kind of like you have to start over, because every structure, every parameter, every anything that means anything is all gone, and you're starting over completely, right?
And now you're actually living with the person, so you actually have to see them all the time. And wait, Claire can cook? What's this? What's this sorcery?
Are you sure? Because it's been an awful long time, and you haven't ever cooked a meal.
I know, right? I remember the first time I cooked a meal too. You're like, wow, I'm gonna do this myself. You're like, hey, now with YouTube, you can cook anything. But even back in 2000, not everything had caught up. You'd have to, go. What do they have at the grocery store? They have these 10-minute meal, 5-minute meal, 4-ingredient meals. You just buy those little magazines, and you could go, and cooking's fun because you got all these little, measurements and stuff like that, which didn't know much about. But it's an experience. It is.
Yeah, for sure. And also too, I'm sure you would agree with this, the freedom to be able to make whatever it is you want.
Yes.
Is kind of huge.
Super huge. Yeah. You didn't have to fight for, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, which are still, even though my favorite at the base was the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, because you could make like 6 of them and take them back with you. But we got stories. We'll talk about that another time. I guess I can just say that what everyone's been saying, that was fond of Shelley. And I think Shelley and I probably share this one thing together, is that we both hate Jenny Linson.
Oh, me too. Count me in on that group.
I want to keep mentioning her name to see if anyone ever actually stands up and says, no, you know what? I actually had a good experience with her, because I don't think that's possible. She was horrible.
Yeah. And Shelley did not like Jenny whatsoever.
I wouldn't think so. Yeah.
In fact, there was several times when Shelley ordered me to interrogate Jenny, because in Shelley's words, she was being a WH, that word.
Yeah.
Waving her, her, whatever you call them, her cans in front of his face. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And that's the fascinating behind the scenes stuff that you had access to, and hearing about stuff like that just starts to make sense with, everyone thinks that Dave Miscavige is this priestly, godly figure that's perfect. He is not.
Nope.
Yeah. And I would argue that he's not even that smart.
Right.
Yeah. I would argue that he's not that smart, because how do you take a group of dedicated people that will do anything to achieve whatever goal it may be, whether it's wrong or not, they will do anything to do it, and ruin that? You get rid of your Jefferson Hawkins, your Mark Headleys, there is just a large group of people that left there. And, Shelley should come out.
Yep.
And she's probably not going to see this. She's probably up at CST, that location where people have talked about. So I guess I should end with the message, again, Shelley, a lot of people love you. If you come out, you would have support. I hope that she gets, something comes about of it. And I think that your YouTube channel about the Where Shelley is probably going to be the impetus that pushes that, or pushes it over the edge, or breaks the camel's back, the straw that breaks the camel's back, So,
I certainly hope so. And yes, I completely agree with you. I can't imagine that in 18 years of being at CST, Shelley hasn't had the thought cross her mind, like, what the heck am I doing here?
Right.
And how am I accomplishing what I joined this organization to do? Even with her extreme loyalty to Hubbard, as her father figure, I still can't imagine that the thought hasn't crossed her mind that she should get the heck out of there and start her life over.
I agree. Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
Awesome. All righty. Well, any last thoughts you'd like to share for this episode, or should we leave it at that?
I think we'll leave it at that. If I remember anything else or something comes to mind, we'll definitely talk about it in the future. And I would love to get on with you and Amy. That would be a fun conversation.
Yes.
I find your conversations fascinating.
Awesome. Yeah. And we'll do something with you and Mark and I too, because we have stories for days between the three of us. It would be so therapeutic to compare notes on on our different perspectives, unfiltered, And
I'm saving my the one time Mark and I didn't agree. There's only one our entire lives. I'm saving that story because I would love to get his reaction to it. And
Perfect. I can't wait.
All right. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Sterling. I appreciate it. And we will talk again soon.
For sure.
All righty.
All right.